GGFF, my support sucks. I can't lane. Why do I always get the ADCs? Supports and ADCs bickering with each other in the bot lane is a tale as old as League of Legends' inception. And it's unsurprising. The other roles have way more control over their early game destiny, while ADCs and supports must work together to emerge victorious. That's not the easiest task when they've just met 5 seconds ago and one person is often auto-filled, and both players certainly don't know how to play correctly, unless they've subscribed to Skillcapped, obviously. But fear not, because believe it or not, it's incredibly easy to consistently win bot lane via working together even if your partner is bad. This is done by using strategies that don't really require any coordination, so long as you are doing what we're about to teach you. By the end of this guide, you'll learn how to play any bot lane matchup in League of Legends and seriously increase your chances of winning because of it. By the way, we just created a brand new custom course specifically for this guide at skillcap.com. It's there you can unlock an additional 8 site-exclusive guides where our Skillcap Challenger expert Hector walks you through how to play every single bot lane matchup. Find out more along with the discount code at the end of this guide. Now, back to the video. First, you need to identify what type of support is on both teams. Support champions are overloaded with utility by design. Their purpose is to be helpful, so they have very helpful abilities baked into their kit, which easily gives them the biggest influence over which bot lane is going to win compared to the measly auto-attack based ADCs. For example, consider the impact of Jinx landing a W compared to a Leona scoring an EQ, or Ashe hitting her W compared to Blitzcrank hitting Q. You get the point. Supports are kings of the bot lane and will always determine how a matchup should be played, and that's why we first need to break this down for you guys. The easiest way to do that is by mastering playing with the 2 main support archetypes. 1. Melee engaged supports. 2. Range supports. Let's begin with melee supports. The 2 skills to learn here which will help your win rate the most are maintaining health, controlling the wave. Starting with maintaining health, it's no secret that a low health engaged support is literally useless. If they go in with too low health, they will just die, and their purpose as a champion is to engage. Thus, with too low health, they can't do anything until they recall, which severely limits your ability to win lane. What players don't think about when laning with an engaged support though, is that their health bar matters just as much. If the ADC is too low health to fight, then the engaged support again cannot engage. So low health with an engaged lane equals useless, equals lose lane. Got it. There's also another moment of the lane phase where engaged lanes are completely useless as well, even if they have full health, which is where pretty much every ADC goes wrong, and that's the first 3 levels of the lane phase. This is something we like to call the parenthood phase, and that's because there's a mindset all the greats, like Hector, uses to easily reach level 3 safely, so he can win the lane phase even with the worst supports. That mindset is to imagine you're the parent to a newborn child and your support is the baby. We don't get to choose our children and they don't get to choose their parent, but a support without their abilities makes them the baby and you the adult, so it's your responsibility to keep them nice and healthy until they're all grown up, or in other words, until they hit level 3. Here's a Platinum Elo game to show you just how important these parenthood levels can be. Here's a Samira with an Alistar versus Jinx and Lulu. Samira needs to score multiple kills in this lane before her opponents scale. Let's watch what happens though. At level 1, we can see just how useless her cute little calf is. He tries to act all grown up, headbutting in without his Q, and does absolutely nothing but take free damage. It's easy to think that this Alistar sucks, but what Samira does is even worse. Remember that your goal during these early levels is to play safe, preserve health, and reach level 2 and 3. Instead of doing so, Samira is actively hitting the wave. That's the equivalent of feeding your child McDonald's and candy every day and wondering why they have diabetes. By hitting the wave, she's causing the wave to stay neutral in the middle of the lane for a longer period of time, instead of just allowing it to push into her faster. One of the consequences of doing so is that you have to walk into your opponents more often to last hit, rather than waiting patiently at your tower for the wave to come into you. Look how much health she's losing having to walk up to the wave to score last hits, which we do want to make a quick note of. Remember that you should be fine giving up some CS. It's completely okay to concede a lot of caster minions during these parenthood levels, since they are much harder to get and give less gold than the melee ones. But again, because Samira was actively hitting the wave instead of just being patient and letting it come to her, it is taking forever for it to crash at her tower. This is giving the enemy duo more and more opportunities to look for harass onto both her and Alistar. As you can see, Samira's poor little calf is suffering some health issues from his diabetes. So, when the wave finally crashes into her tower, they're both already at around half health. Alistair is level 2 now, aka a child, and he wants to impress mommy. He looks for a big play to show off his muscles, but by now, it's too late. They were both so low that the second Alistair tries to do anything, it never had a chance of working out. We won't take any fault away from the Alistair though. Did he take too much poke for free during this lane? Yup. Was his engage awful since they were down a level? Absolutely. But that's the issue you have to deal with every game as an ADC. You can't expect children to play well, so it's your responsibility to make things as easy for them as possible. Samira could have easily done so by not hitting the wave and just patiently waiting for the minions to come into her faster, resulting in less health lost overall. Not convinced? To contrast, let's see how a high elo Kaisa shows us what it takes to be Mom of the Year. As she gets into lane, she has 3 melees to secure. Granted, this would be easy with her Q, but she leveled W for some reason and has to last hit them with auto attacks. This is quite nice. You will often be able to get most of the melees during the parenthood phase. It's the casters which are usually too dangerous to push up for when playing with a melee versus ranged. And Kaisa is about to show us exactly why. She makes a mistake by going for one of the ranged casters for some reason, which once again illustrates how awful it is to trade this much health for 14 gold. Still with a potion and going back to playing correctly, she's on track to staying healthy and raising a happy child, just by pulling back and waiting for the wave to come to her while safely last hitting. Once the wave is cleared, there's a low health melee minion up for grabs. Should Kaisa go for this? Of course not. You can sneak in most melees, but when a ranged support is safeguarding the melee like this, you can just let it go, which Kaisa does nicely. Kaisa and Pyke continue to sneak in some last hits on the remaining melee minions. She also punishes the Zyra well for overstepping. Let's speed this up while they play safe as she waits for Pyke to grow up. And just like that, Kaisa has taken care of herself and her baby, raising her baby Pyke up to be a big, strong man, unlocking all 3 of his abilities with full health. So, let's see what happens. Kaisa immediately loses her mind and throws a bunch of her health away for no reason. But does it matter? No! Pyke's all grown up and making big boy plays, and immediately, once they're level 3, they can make plays and score a double kill. It really is just that simple. Now that we've taken a masterclass for not losing our health for no reason and why, there's a little more knowledge you need to know about minion waves when playing with engaged supports. To provide your support with the ability to get a proper engage off, you not only need to preserve your health bars, but to set up the wave towards the middle of the lane. Most engaged supports tend to be melee, and if you mismanage the wave to where it's constantly near the enemy's tower, then you just earned yourself an AFK support who can't do anything. Not only that, but you want to thin the wave enough so that your support can go in as well. During the early game, you won't win a fight at a massive minion disadvantage, so you need to even out the waves to enable you to go in. The thing about the parenthood phase we just covered is that this process occurs naturally for you. In that previous Kaisa example, since the enemy team was always pushing, the wave was always either close to Kaisa's tower or in the middle of the lane. Not only that, but the tower is helping Kaisa equalize the minion disadvantage too. Each time her opponents crashed, the waves went back to being even in size. Naturally, that's what allowed Pyke to look for that all-in. The Parenthood plan is not bad for playing to your 2 win conditions of maintaining your health and setting up the wave in the middle of the lane. That being said, there's a more proactive approach you can take to make that happen as well. To understand how, let's take a look at this Sivir example. As she gets in the lane, Sivir begins hitting the wave. If you believe that you have more wave clear than your opponents, then you can also follow this game plan. By pushing, you're taking away your opponent's ability to trade with you since they're at a minion deficit. This is a more active approach to being a parent since you are forcibly keeping your child out of danger. This was all well and good by Sivir. Keeping the wave shoved accomplished one of the first goals to playing with a melee support. Both she and Thresh remained relatively healthy during the early levels. Unfortunately though, she forgot her second goal of playing with an engaged support, and that's where everything went wrong. Remember that you want to both preserve your health and manipulate the minion wave to be even around the center of the lane. When you push waves into your opponent, you should play for the bounce back slow push that happens afterwards. Here's what it should look like. You crash the wave to keep you and your support healthy. Then after the crash, you let it slow build up to your side of the lane, thinning it along the way. Eventually, this places the wave right in the middle and thinned out just enough so your support can go in. Again, similar to how things worked out for Kai'Sa. Instead, Sivir just kept pushing and pushing. She kept trying to do everything on her own, while Thresh was unable to offer any assistance because the wave was always at their opponent's tower. Imagine if she had worked together with her Thresh. This lane would have been significantly easier for her. Rather than dying, they probably could have scored a kill if she just let the wave come into the middle of the lane through a bounce back. Moving on to the second archetype of teammates you'll be playing with, let's talk about ranged supports. You'll be pleased to know that you don't have to be a single parent with ranged supports. They're all relatively useful starting from the get-go, so all you need to learn is how to enable them to succeed. And to do so, there's 3 critical skills you'll need to master in order to work well together with them. 1. Pushing the wave. 2. Warding. 3. Parallel trading. Remember how you enabled your melee supports to engage by using health as a resource? Well, ranged supports want to cast their powerful abilities on their opponents, and those spells usually come in the form of skill shots. Rather than preserving health to enable ranged champions, the best way to facilitate them is to build a minion advantage. Simply put, having more minions than your opponent gives your support easier access to fire away their spells, with your opponents having less minions to stand behind to block them. Not only that, but as you're certainly aware of, ranged supports are quite squishy. If you find that your caster allies are dying too often in a lane, then you really need to consider how much you're prioritizing getting a minion lead over your opponent. It is significantly harder to all-in your partner if you have way more minions on your side. By having the wave advantage, you'll be both keeping your teammates safe from being engaged on, while at the same time allowing them to barrage your opponents with their powerful spells. Here's an example of how detrimental it can be to not play for this, compared to an ADC who actually is. In this replay, we have a Jinx and Lux pairing versus Xayah and Senna. Both ADCs have a skill shot caster type of support. But notice how, as Jinx gets into lane, she is hesitant to hit the wave. On the contrary, the enemy Xayah is the one getting the minion lead and wave control. As we just discussed, this creates a 2-part problem for the Jinx. The enemy Senna is going to have a lot more room to play aggressively now, whereas her own Lux has a much harder time getting anything done. We can clearly see this from snippets throughout the lane phase. Senna is constantly walking forward, landing a bit of harass and putting pressure. Meanwhile, Lux is just standing really far back, unable to do anything. It's really easy to say support diff in these kind of games, when the reality is that one ADC is playing for their support while the other isn't. There's further proof of how important it is to maintain a minion lead into this lane. As Xayah and Senna keep their push up, eventually they make a mistake. Towers are sort of an equalizer when it comes to minion waves, as you learned in the melee section of this guide. Xayah and Senna's mistake is that they overextend while the tower takes away their minion advantage. Look at the Lux. This is the exact same player that looked useless and auto-filled. Immediately, she becomes competent and starts walking forward, landing spells and putting extreme pressure. What a weird coincidence. For contrast, let's watch an ADC who was pushing the wave from the start of the lane versus a typical scary engaged support. Here, we've got the classic Caitlyn-Morgana pairing versus a Zeri and Thresh. Naturally, Caitlyn and Morgana should look to push the wave into their opponents. Take notice of how aggressively this Morgana can play due to Caitlyn pushing the wave so much. She's constantly moving forward, trying to land binding or poke on the enemy duo without much risk of being engaged on herself. Sure, nothing is landing just yet, but the important part is that she's able to in the first place. Eventually, she does land a critical binding, chunking Thresh to near death. This is incredibly frustrating for your opponents to deal with, since they can't really fight back at a minion deficit, so all they can do is watch as you constantly harass and deny them minions. Thresh was harassed so much that he was eventually forced to base, and take a look at how angry he is when he gets back. He's so tilted that the lane is unplayable for him that he flashes forward trying to find an engage. Sadly for him, things fail because he's still at a minion disadvantage. It's fair to say that the enemy Zeri is probably not happy about how this lane is going. You might have an immediate concern with this advice though. Sure, it makes it easier to win the lane if you're constantly pushing, but doesn't that just open you up to being ganked in the long run? This is a common misconception. In fact, it's easy to argue that being the one pushing into your opponent actually makes you less susceptible to ganks if you play well. The problem ADC players have when they constantly push waves in low elo is that they're relying on their supports to set up proper vision. If you're pushing, then these types of shallow wards are never going to save you from a gank. You're so far up in the lane that by the time you see the enemy jungler coming, you'll have no way out and just end up dying. That's why you need to take initiative and establish deep vision whenever you want to push aggressively. Once you get the wave into your opponent's tower, then while they're stuck clearing the wave, you can move and get some wards deeper into either the river or the enemy jungle. That way, when you push, you can see the enemy jungler coming to gank and you can respond by easily walking away. Of course, you can't just forcibly get wave control every game for free without fighting your opponents. The more you climb and the smarter your enemies become, then the more you'll need to fight them to actually get wave control in the first place. And to consistently win those fights, you absolutely need to learn about parallel trading. All this means is that whenever you trade with your opponents, that you want to stand behind your support so that you can both hit the same target. You also ideally want to stand in a way to where your opponents can't both target one player at the same time either. Let's show you a real example of how low elo ADC players lose fights by not following this simple concept. Here's a Platinum Kai'Sa playing with a Soraka versus Ashe and Zilean. Both sides are completely even in terms of wave control, so there's no advantage there. To win right now, it's all about trading rather than relying on a minion lead. As this goes on, a fight is initiated by both supports looking to poke each other. This prompts Kai'Sa to help, which initially seems fine. It's fair to say that if she catches up, she'd technically be parallel trading with her Soraka, since they could both focus Zilean down. The problem is that Kai'Sa tunnel visioned way too hard on the trade. Once Zilean got out of the silence, he sped himself up and repositioned. Take a look at the result. Instead of being between them, Zilean has now made it so that Kai'Sa is in perfect position for both he and Ashe to punish her. Meanwhile, Soraka is in range to hit no one. The lane is effectively a 1v2 at the moment for Kai'Sa. How does Kai'Sa choose to respond to this positional disadvantage? Well, she hits Ashe, the target furthest away from her Soraka. It takes forever for her support to reach Ashe to help, and by the time she does, the fight is already over and it was a decisive 2v2 win for the blue side bot lane. It's clear just how important parallel positioning is in order to win trades in bot. From the enemy's point of view, Ashe and Zilean started this fight at a slight health disadvantage, but handily won it just due to positioning. This following clip should serve to convince you just how much high elo players value parallel positioning. This is a challenger Korean solo queue game, and just watch all four players as they look to trade with one another. All of them are trying to bait their opponents in, while at the same time repositioning relative to their own teammates so that they can focus fire a target together. Neither side is getting baited too hard because they all understand just how important of a concept parallel trading is. We're not telling you that you need to make as many micro movements as these four players made here or to overanalyze this example. It was just to showcase how important this concept is to good players. In your own games, just keep it in mind before trading with your opponents. You should always try to sync up with your support, otherwise this is going to happen. And trust us, we know that your Lulu support is going to stand 15 yards behind you the entire lane phase. Some games it'll be impossible to apply parallel trading because your support doesn't want to play up with you. That's fine, you can't do anything about that. It's better to play back with them and wait to punish enemy mistakes in those types of games. We know it sucks, but that's all you can do with bad supports. And if you want to take your laning to the next level, then you need our brand new custom course specifically made for this guide at skillcap.com. It's there you can unlock an additional 8 site-exclusive guides where our SkillCap Challenger expert Hector walks you through how to play every single bot lane matchup. That's not all though. With our brand new course page, it's as simple as clicking ADC, then selecting the laning category, and just like that, you have 10 courses with over 60 unique guides, breaking down exactly how you can stomp lane regardless of your support. Best part, all of this is risk-free with our rank improvement guarantee. So, what are you waiting for? Head over to skillcap.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Discount link in the description below. Alright guys, that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.